My dear Fright fans, tonight's tale is a real scream about a man who thought logic could explain everything. But as he's about to learn on Route 22, some things defy even the sharpest minds. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell icon so you don't miss any of our ghastly tales. Now prepare yourself for whispers on Route 22. Mark Dalton, a 45-year-old history teacher at Lincoln High, had always been a bastion of logic and skepticism. His students often joked that if Mark couldn't see it, touch it, or teach it, then it simply didn't exist. This pragmatic approach to life had served him well, grounding him in a world often too quick to chase shadows and myths. That night, as he locked up his classroom after a long parent-teacher meeting, the air was thick with an impending storm. He shrugged into his coat, scoffing lightly at the idea that some considered this weather a prelude to supernatural events. Route 22 stretched before him, an artery through the heart of local folklore. Tales of ghostly hitchhikers, disappearing vehicles, and unexplained lights were common fodder in the town's diners and gas stations. But to Mark, these were nothing more than tales to spice up a small-town life. He chuckled to himself as he started his car, the engine's familiar hum a reassurance against the encroaching unease of the night. As he drove, the first drops of rain began to fall, slowly at first, then with increasing fervor. The road ahead became a mesmerizing blur of wet asphalt and his car's rhythmic wipers. Mark, a man who found comfort in the tangible, felt an odd sense of disquiet creep up his spine. He attributed it to the isolation of Route 22 at this late hour and the intensity of the storm. He reached for the radio, seeking the solace of a late-night talk show, or even just the banality of commercials. Instead, he was met with a crackling static that seemed to weave incoherent whispers through its white noise. The whispers, if that's what they could be called, grew in intensity as the storm raged on. Mark's rational mind battled with the creeping dread that something was amiss. "It's just the weather," he muttered to himself, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. His thoughts drifted to his wife, Laura, warm and safe in their home with their 2 children. A surge of protectiveness washed over him, hastening his desire to leave the desolation of Route 22. Then it happened, a chill unlike any other he'd ever felt. It was as if the air itself had grown colder, heavier. The whispers in the static grew louder, forming coherent phrases now. "Leave! Turn back!" they seemed to implore. Mark's firm grip on skepticism began to falter. Was his mind playing tricks on him, or was there an element of truth in the old tales? His internal debate was shattered by a scream, not through the radio, but as if from the very air around him. His heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline surging through his veins. Ahead, illuminated briefly by his headlights, was the figure of a woman, ethereal and pallid, her eyes wide with terror. Instinct took over. Mark swerved violently, the car skidding uncontrollably as the world around him spun into chaos and darkness. The crash, when it came, was both jarring and eerily silent. Mark's world faded to black, the whispers following him down into the depths of unconsciousness. Regaining consciousness, Mark found himself enveloped in an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional drip of water from his damaged car. His head throbbed painfully, a stark reminder of the surreal crash. The car, now a crumpled testament to his encounter, lay nestled against an ancient oak tree. He fumbled for the door handle, his movements sluggish, his mind a whirlpool of confusion and fear. Outside, the storm had subsided, leaving in its wake a dense fog that clung to the ground like a living thing. The air was thick with a palpable sense of desolation. This part of Route 22 was unfamiliar to him, overgrown and forlorn, as if it had been forgotten by time itself. The moon, a sliver of silver in the cloudy sky, cast ghostly shadows across the road. Mark's eyes adjusted to the darkness, and he began to make out the details of his surroundings. The road here was narrower, the asphalt cracked and reclaimed by nature. Old, rusted signs poked out of the underbrush, their warnings faded and illegible. It was as though he had stumbled into a different era, a forgotten chapter of Route 22. The whispers returned, now more distinct, echoing in the stillness of the night. They were voices, disembodied and sorrowful, weaving a tapestry of sadness and regret. "Help us, find peace," they seemed to plead. The skepticism that had always been Mark's armor began to crack under the weight of this inexplicable reality. As he ventured further along the forgotten road, the moonlight revealed more haunting details. A broken guardrail, a scattering of old, weathered flowers, and a makeshift memorial with faded photographs and candles long extinguished. The remnants of a tragedy frozen in time. Mark's heart raced as he pieced together the scene. This was the site of an accident, a calamity that had claimed lives and left a scar on this hidden stretch of Route 22. An old newspaper, its edges curled and yellowed, lay among the debris. It spoke of a devastating crash years ago, a young couple's lives snuffed out in an instant. The whispers grew more urgent, swirling around him like a cold wind. They were the voices of those who perished here, their spirits tethered to this place of their untimely demise. Each voice told a fragment of the story. The joy of a drive on a starry night turned to horror, the screech of tires, the shattering of glass, and then only darkness. Among these sorrowful confessions, one voice stood out. It was her, the ghostly woman from the road. She spoke not with the menace he had first attributed to her, but with a profound sadness. Her name was Elizabeth, and her story was one of love and loss. She and her beloved had died on this very road, their hopes and dreams buried in the wreckage. Mark realized with a start that the figure he had seen was not a harbinger of his demise, but a guardian, a sentinel of the forgotten. She had tried to warn him, to save him from a fate similar to hers. This revelation shook him to his core. He, a man of facts and logic, was standing at the crossroads of the inexplicable and the undeniable. The night stretched on as Mark wandered the ghostly stretch of Route 22, the voices of the past his only companions. He knew he could not leave this place the same man he was before. The forgotten souls called to him, entrusting him with their stories, their unfulfilled lives. As the first light of dawn began to pierce the darkness, Mark knew what he had to do. He had to bring their stories to light, to give voice to those who had been silenced by tragedy. Only then could the whispers on Route 22 finally find peace. As the first rays of dawn began to filter through the trees, casting a soft, ethereal glow over the forgotten part of Route 22, Mark felt a profound sense of purpose enveloping him. The chill of the night was giving way to the warmth of the morning sun, but the chill in his heart, born from the night's eerie encounters, persisted. He walked along the neglected road, each step guided by the whispers that now felt like old, familiar friends. The spirits of those lost in the tragic accident years ago seemed to cling to every broken sign and overgrown bush. Their voices, once mere whispers, had become clear and resonant in the quiet of the dawn. They spoke of their lives, their joys, and the abrupt end that had befallen them on this lonely stretch of Route 22. Mark listened, his heart heavy with the burden of their untold stories. The young couple, Elizabeth and John, had been full of dreams and love, their entire lives ahead of them. Their laughter had once filled this very road, their plans and aspirations snuffed out in an instant on that fateful night. The accident, a cruel twist of fate, had left them bound to this place, their voices echoing in the void. The more Mark learned, the more he felt a responsibility to these lost souls. They were no longer just whispers in the wind. They had become real to him, their stories etched into his very being. Elizabeth's voice was the most poignant, tinged with a sorrow that transcended death. She spoke of the joy she had found in John, their plans for a future that would never come to pass. Her warnings to Mark, her desperate attempt to prevent another tragedy, were acts of a love that had not faded, even in death. As he wandered, the landscape around him seemed to change, almost as if the spirits were painting a picture of their lives for him. He saw the road as it had been, vibrant and full of life. He saw the couple, so full of happiness, their laughter a stark contrast to the silence that now hung in the air. But with these visions came the harrowing replay of their last moments, the screech of tires, the terrible realization of impending doom, and then the shattering of glass and metal. Mark felt each emotion as if it were his own, the fear, the helplessness, the finality of it all. The revelation that these spirits, these lost souls, were not mere echoes of folklore, but real people with unfinished stories, changed Mark in ways he couldn't have anticipated. He understood now that Elizabeth and the others were not just remnants of a bygone tragedy. They were reminders of the fragility of life and the indelible marks we leave behind. As the sun climbed higher, casting its light on the forgotten segment of Route 22, Mark knew what he had to do. He couldn't just leave this place and return to his life as if nothing had happened. These spirits, these voices, had chosen him for a reason. He was to be their conduit to the living world, a bearer of their stories, a seeker of their peace. Determined, Mark made his way back to his car. His journey had taken on a new direction. He needed to share what he had learned, to tell the stories of Elizabeth, John, and the others. He had to bring light to this darkened stretch of road, to give voice to the voiceless, and in doing so perhaps help these restless spirits find the peace they so desperately sought. As he drove away, the whispers faded, but their message remained etched in his soul. Route 22 was no longer just a road. It was a testament to lives cut short, to love unfulfilled, and to the undeniable truth that sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the most real. Mark, once a skeptic, now carried with him a deep understanding of the unseen, a profound respect for the stories of the past, and a renewed perspective on the mysteries of life and death. Mark returned home under the light of a sun that seemed to shine a bit differently than before. The familiar streets and houses of his neighborhood now carried a new depth, each holding untold stories, much like those he had encountered on Route 22. As he pulled into his driveway, his family rushed out, their faces etched with worry that transformed into relief upon seeing him. Embracing them, Mark felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and a profound connection to the fragility of life. In the days that followed, Mark found himself changed. The skepticism that had once been his shield now gave way to a deeper understanding of the mysteries that lay beyond the veil of the known. He began to document the stories of Elizabeth and the others, their voices still echoing in his mind. Each word he wrote was a tribute to their lost lives and a step towards fulfilling the promise he had made at the break of dawn on that forgotten road. His teachings at school took on a new dimension, blending history with the understanding that some truths lay beyond the realm of textbooks and evidence. His students noticed the change, drawn to the depth and passion that now laced his lectures. Mark's experience on Route 22 had transformed him. He was no longer just a teacher and a skeptic. He had become a storyteller, a guardian of memories, and a believer in the unseen connections that weave through our lives. The whispers on Route 22 had not only revealed a hidden past, but had also opened his eyes to a new realm of understanding and respect for the mysteries of life, death, and everything that lies in between. Well, boils and ghouls, it looks like our friend Mark discovered that whispers can be more than just talk. especially when they echo from beyond the grave. Did this eerie tale rattle your bones? Drop a comment with your own ghostly experiences, but beware, in the realm of the unexplained, skepticism might just lead to your own spine-tingling adventure. Fright fans, click next for more chills and hit subscribe to join our ghastly gang. You see, who dares to miss out, so watch our next video.